With the pandemic producing an alarming increase in loneliness across the globe, it's wholly apt that the theme for this year's Mental Health Awareness Week is loneliness. We are a social species on whom we want others to depend. We are wired for belonging, and yet for many of us, recent and current circumstances aren't conducive to this. Social psychologists define loneliness as the gap between the social connections that you would like to have versus those that you feel you experience. But loneliness is very much a subjective experience. That's part of what makes it so hard to identify. With that in mind, we asked some of our colleagues here at Fastmarkets to tell us about their experiences of loneliness. This is what they wanted to share with you.
On a summer's day 2 years ago, I lost my brother suddenly and unexpectedly. It was a great shock. Growing up, my brother and I shared many values and principles, and my family were very close to him as well. Losing him was a huge blow to all of our lives. During the weeks immediately following the loss, I was offered tremendous support by friends and family. However, after a while, that tailed off as people started to move on with their own lives. And I started to experience loneliness.
When I'm confronted with a packed room of people that I need to network with and connect, that feels kind of daunting. So I'm naturally an extroverted introvert, which sounds a bit crazy, but it does mean I love going out, I love meeting new people. But I also don't necessarily find that small talk is the easiest thing in the world.
Generally speaking, I think I'm usually most lonely at times of high stress or turbulence. Something about those feelings makes me a far more insular person and makes it more difficult for me to form connections. Feelings of inadequacy and fear usually start to mount at those times, and quite often an inner monologue develops that says I either don't have value to add to a conversation, or else I might be ostracised if I were to share my views and experience.
When I moved from New Zealand a few years ago, I was really struggling with loneliness. I'd left my family and friends behind and was effectively starting again. I was lucky when I started my previous job to find a great group of friends who were from Australia and New Zealand. However, they all moved home just before the pandemic started. I then unfortunately lost my job and I was back to square one in an unprecedented time, feeling lonely and without purpose.
I joined a club called Lunch Club, which is an online club, and they match people up with you on a weekly basis and you have a half-hour call. You've got some common interests and it's brilliant to build out more connections.
There's no right or wrong way to overcome loneliness when you're grieving. Everyone has their own way of dealing with it. My way is that I have something on the wall in front of my desk to remind me of my brother's strong spirit and energy, which helps me to connect back to other people.
To help me through this time, I tried some new hobbies and picked up some old hobbies that I hadn't done in a while. This helped me to keep my mind focused and made me feel like I was achieving something. I also used social media and found some groups of women in London in similar situations, which brought me comfort knowing that I wasn't alone in how I was feeling. For any women that are feeling lonely in London, it's London New Girl and London Lonely Girl on Facebook.
Whilst we're not always now in the office with our co-workers, we don't have to necessarily be disconnected from other people. Some of the things that I found really useful are organising team days in, or virtual lunches with members of my team, or else like friends at work that I don't get to see as often now, are really great ways of catching up with people. And obviously that's more so focused on sustaining connections in a work environment, but there's nothing stopping us also from working on these friendships outside of office hours too.
I also joined the business in the heels of COVID. So for me, taking over a business and starting to build relationships has been a really big challenge. So one of the other things I do, and what I found incredibly rewarding, is I make sure that I go back into the office 1 or 2 days a week. because you can build relationships in a way in which is so much richer and connect with stakeholders in a much easier fashion.
If you want to speak to one of our mental health advocates or find out more about the Fastmarkets mental health advocates, please visit the Fastmarkets Wellbeing Hub page.